I have to say, when I was watching that statement, I was texted by one group of Labour MPs. On the pro side, it was Shabana's on great form. On the anti side, I was told this is not going to end well. And after the statement, I have to say, I'm picking up what we might find is a rebellion under the radar. There were MPs speaking in favour, speaking against. A number of MPs didn't say anything but aren't happy, and where there is likely to be trouble, I'm told, is in London, the borough elections next May. What I'm being told is that this is going to go down like a bag of sick in the London borough elections, as far as many London Labour MPs are concerned.
That's the interesting political point of all this, is that despite loads of people's misgivings here on the left about the performative cruelty of this policy, and indeed its applicability in some cases too, it's a real kind of mess of let's just try and throw red meat to the anti-asylum voters and see if they vote for us, rather than just assuming reform of one and voting for them anyway. That is that Keir Starmer needs to get a majority in Parliament to be able to pass this policy. Three things that might happen. The first thing that might happen is that it passes because the Labour MPs just obey the whip. The second thing that might happen is that it fails because we see a massive backbench rebellion, like we did over the changing definition of person dependence payment criteria, that caused a huge backlash from Labour MPs. And I think it is likely that this backlash will be large to this, for two reasons. First of all is that no one joins the Labour Party to steal jewellery from asylum seekers. And whilst Morgan McSweeney did have a vice grip over candidate selections to try and get as many of the right wing of the Labour Party elected as MPs, he still had to draw from a body of members who are broadly opposed to this kind of draconian policy. Hence why, even through those carefully controlled selections, there were enough rebels to water down their welfare cuts earlier on this year. This is likely to happen again, given that it's this same inventory of MPs that is being drawn on. The same kind of MPs who wouldn't vote for PIP cards probably wouldn't vote for these asylum restrictions either, although they may be persuaded to do so because they might be at risk of losing their seat to Reform MPs, which is a little bit different when a lot of Reform supporters also think that the PIP cuts were bad, but I digress. The issue, of course, is that with the PIP cuts, Keir Starmer had 9 months between announcing the policy and voting on it in Parliament, where he could have got MPs from his party to support this issue, and didn't speak to them at all. The whips just assumed they would get support of the MPs. It got to the vote and they had to collapse because they didn't get the support. You'd assume after that failure they would at least try and win MPs round using the whips offices to get them to vote for these draconian measures. But that would imply that there is anybody competent at the top of the McSweeney Politburo, which of course there isn't. So they might just do this all again, where we just get to the voting day and they have to pull it because of misgivings of the backbench MPs. Third thing that might happen, though, is that they may get a backlash from their backbench MPs and a rebellion that means the legislation will fall, but they might pass that legislation with Tory votes. Maybe that the backbench rebellion isn't big enough that Tory and Labour right votes can pass it together, potentially with some kind of amendment from the Tories that makes it even more draconian. So we are looking at lots of different scenarios playing out here politically.
Zack Polanski, how would you describe these plans?
Well, we've just heard that rebellions are under the radar. That's not good enough. Every single Labour MP needs to look to their conscience.
Why?
The interview we just heard, you said it yourself. The question was, you never told anyone when they voted they were voting for this. This is extreme, this is inhumane, and it is a government of cowards. Rather than take on the powerful, because the issue here is not immigration, it's inequality. They went for pensioners, they went for the disabled, and now they're going for people who are fleeing war and conflict. I am furious. So many people are furious because this is a totally unconscionable way to deal with things. And how dare the minister say we are an open, tolerant country? How dare she come tonight to Newsnight and talk about compassion at the same time they're talking about seizing people's assets? I am a child of Jewish ancestry. I am Jewish. We have seen this with Nazi Germany. We are seeing it in 2025. This government needs to hang their heads in shame.
OK, you're
It's also worth pointing out, I know inevitably this clip will go viral going, oh, Zack Polanski is comparing people to the Nazis. But he didn't do that. This is about people fleeing war and persecution, i.e. the kind of people who we accepted as refugees coming from the continent fleeing anti-Semitism. Not enough, obviously. There's quite a backlash, just like there was back then. We should be compassionate and welcoming and not seizing their fucking assets in the same way as they do in Denmark, for example. We shouldn't be doing this. We should be treating people fleeing war in Eritrea or Sudan or whatever it is the same way that we would be treating Jews who were fleeing Nazi persecution. That is the point that he's making. Before any rightoids go in here and say, oh, comparisons to the Nazis. I'm just like, well, there is quite literally a genocide happening in Gaza, and those are the kind of people who we should be opening our doors to. We opened our doors to Bosnian refugees in the wake of the genocide in Bosnia in the 90s. I don't see anybody calling for Bosnians to have to go back home. Do you?
Obviously disagreeing. What would you say to Zack Polanski?
Well, because you can't just have compassion for the illegal immigrants coming on boats and not compassion for the girls that are being sexually assaulted by them and the people that are killed on our streets.
What's funny that they're doing this all over again, going, well, the asylum seekers are the only people who rape in this country, apparently. The only people who are a threat to women in terms of rape or asylum seekers, when in fact, you are far, 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 far more likely, in fact, most likely to be raped by someone that you know. It's ridiculous to try and claim that asylum seekers have a unique propensity to be rapists. It's absolute nonsense, right? If you really want to be scared about people around you who might be out to rape you, it's most likely to be someone that you know, someone in your family, one of your friends, one of your colleagues. It's not likely to be an asylum seeker. Again, they're trying to imply that these people are scary to try and whip up people into a frenzy so we get pogroms like we had on our street last year.
We do have men that come on boats and within 8 days sexually assault 14-year-old girls. I find it really galling that the Green Party are so focused on illegal migrants, but they don't have any compassion for our young girls and women who...
I'm not sure that's true.
Well, first of all, an asylum seeker who is coming over here cannot come over here illegally because we need safe and managed routes. And it's very clear across international law that anyone is able to find safe sanctuary in a country. France is a safe country, but Britain is also a safe country. Germany takes twice as many asylum seekers as Britain. Secondly, sexual assault is a deeply, deeply awful and tragic thing that we need to prevent and stop. But there is absolutely no evidence that the people who are sexually assaulting people are people seeking asylum. And
I'm sorry, there is. There's convictions.
Violence
There is
against women and girls.
convictions.
Individual convictions are anecdotes. That is not data that shows that there is somehow a higher propensity for sexual assault coming from asylum seekers. But again, this is what the right do. This is all the right do. They don't have data, they don't have numbers, they don't have facts or statistics, they have anecdotes. It's just Tim Pool as the pinnacle of conservative thought. If anyone's watched any Tim Pool, all he does is go, well, I remember one time I read a news story that said this, which means that every other situation happened exactly the same way.
There is convictions of people who came on boats. They have been convicted. Have you seen the case in Epping? Are you not watching the news? Of course there is evidence.
Well, this is the very definition of racism, is finding one case and saying, actually, this is the class of entire people across people seeking asylum. The people seeking asylum...
Let Lane Cunningham finish.
So we have a Borders Act, and it is actually illegal to come into our country without a passport, without documentation. So the way it happens, they come on a boat, and they are illegal.
Only not to seek asylum. If you come here via irregular means and you declare asylum, that is a legal process of getting here to claim asylum. If there is no safe route available for you, you can't be an illegal asylum seeker. That's nonsense.
Illegal migrants, and they land on our shores and they say the word asylum, and they are granted all the rights of asylum seekers, yet they're coming from France, and the illegal entry offence is new.
I mean, they're granted all of the things of asylum seekers because they are asylum seekers. That's literally the whole point. It's like people who try and say, well, they're illegitimate asylum seekers. There is no such thing as an illegitimate asylum seeker, hence the word seeker. Once they have asylum, they become a refugee. You can say that there are asylum seekers who don't meet the criteria for refugee status, and that's what the vetting process is for. That's what the asylum case process is for. Anyone can be an asylum seeker, but not everyone can be given asylum and become a refugee. The problem with this entire discussion is that the right wing literally don't know what the fuck they're talking about because they're idiots. And also nasty racist fucks like this woman is.
Neutralized. We only prosecute 1% of illegal entry into this country. How can we be a democratic, sovereign country when we have decriminalized illegal entry into our country?
Where we prosecute 1% of them, because that's the percent of them broadly that don't declare asylum, i.e. the ones who haven't followed a legal process and are illegal and should be deported. If you arrive here via irregular means and you don't claim asylum, you should absolutely be deported. But that's not the case, because if they're an asylum seeker, they have declared asylum. It's in the name.
I want to see some compassion for the girls that are being sexually assaulted. The man who was killed.
See, this woman shows no compassion to anyone who gets sexually assaulted by anyone who isn't an asylum seeker. That's the issue with these fucking racist reform cockroaches, is that all they care about, the only thing that they care about, is using rape as a weapon to attack people who are not the same skin colour as them. That's the only thing these people care about when it comes to rape and sexual assault. When it actually comes to the vast majority of cases of rape and sexual assault in this country, they couldn't give a shit. Do they turn up to the debates in Parliament? No. Do they ever talk about it on their social media? No. It's only ever a weapon with which that they can attack asylum seekers. It's only a cudgel to use against people who come here from overseas. When the majority of cases of rape and sexual assault done by British citizens, majority of rape and sexual assault done by white people, majority of rape and sexual assault comes from people who know the victim. But they don't care about that. They couldn't give a shit about that. Probably because they're married to a bunch of fucking rapists as well. Wouldn't put it past them.
In Uxbridge. And I find it quite shocking that the minister you just had on, all she spoke about was the safety of the people coming on boats. It's obvious that the safety of women and girls in this country is not Labour's priority because she didn't mention it once. And that's what we're fighting.
Well, she didn't mention it once because it's not a fucking one-sided issue. As I said before, if you want to talk about rape and sexual assault, let's talk about it in the totality rather than focusing on a couple of anecdotes that you can weaponise against people fleeing war and persecution because you're a monster.
Sorry, just on that, Labour have a commitment to halve violence against women and girls, but within a decade, by the end of the decade. I think I'm right in saying. I want to ask you, Zack Polanski. The Home Secretary said illegal migration is making this country a more divided place. Is she right?
The Home Secretary is making this country a more divided place. She talks about the racial abuse she's experienced, and that's awful. But we know that every time the Labour government parrot reform and bring in these sorts of policies, we know that hate crime rises. We know there are lots of people in this country, people of colour, who are not migrants, who are already feeling marginalised, who are already feeling in some places where they don't belong. We're having this whole conversation driven by Tommy Robinson and the Millionaire Reform Party.
Don't speak for people.
That the Labour government.
Let him finish, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay.
That the Labour government are emboldening this kind of rhetoric from reform, because I don't know what Keir Starmer's plan is here. If people want Nigel Farage and reform, if they want the kind of racism that Tommy Robinson is pushing when we've got Labour ministers saying deport, 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 and Tommy Robinson is saying the Overton window is obliterated, they'll vote for reform. They've got that choice.
The plan, they would say...
It's true. Absolutely true. I mean, you actually look at people's responses to this. Is anybody saying, oh, I'll actually vote Labour now. I thought you were soft on migration, but now I'm going to vote for you instead. The response coming from the reform voters has been, ha, this shows reform was right all along. Total vindication. I'm glad Labour have capitulated into something they never believed in the first place, because Shabana Mahmood certainly didn't when she was asking for a general amnesty for undocumented workers. But she's changed her tune for political expediency. And the voters realise that that's the case. Voters aren't stupid. Voters know that there are plenty of people in the Labour Party who think this is bad. Voters know that they're only doing this to try and win back reform voters. Not even necessarily win back. Reform are winning most of their voters from non-voters, not from the Labour Party. They're hardly winning anyone back because people are leaving to the left, or at least the more progressive side, in terms of social policy and in terms of migration policy, from Labour to parties that are not like Reform. So they're not going to be winning anybody, and all they're going to do is give credence to Reform's narrative and tell their voters that they were correct, rather indeed than winning them over with better argumentation and successful policy, because these people have no ideology and they have no policy, because they spent 5 years in opposition crucifying the left for their own sins, and didn't have any time to write any policies or have an idea of how they were going to govern. And this was admitted by Maurice Glassman last week on Newsnight, who admitted that they thought they had 5 years to get rid of the left and 5 years to set policy. Admitting they had no plan for government. Admitting that we have elected a government of people who don't have a fucking clue. And this is the result. Policy made up on the fly to appeal to voters who will never vote for them because they're scared of policy being set by other people. Might as well have Nigel Farage as Prime Minister at this point.
If I watched Shabana Mahmood in the comments today. The plan is to deter people coming across in boats, so they're not risking their lives and their children's lives. And the plan, presumably, is to neutralise it as an issue in order to neutralise reform.
Yes, and also to set it in a wider European context, which is that they're looking to Denmark, where they're finding in Denmark the number of asylum applicants has gone down because they've taken much, much stronger measures.
Fell to a 40-year low in
and
Denmark
essentially
last year.
saying, if you do this sort of thing, then the view is in the Labour Party you can sort of save social democracy, and if you don't get it right, then basically they think, Shabana Mahmood thinks, that social democracy in this country will be literally wiped off this map. That's why they...
What social democracy? When have Labour been a social democratic party under Keir Starmer? Like, come on. And even then, like, the Social Democrats in Denmark just get into coalition with the fucking Liberals and the right anyway. And we're different from Denmark anyway, who have access to the Dublin Protocol because they're a member of the European Union. They don't have the same pull factors that we do because we have, in most cases, familial or linguistic or colonial ties with people seeking asylum, which is why they come here. Not because they believe we're a soft touch, like Shabana Mahmood was trying to say, that we're a golden ticket, which isn't true. We are less generous than many other countries in Europe. And when you literally speak to asylum seekers themselves and ask them why they're coming here, they go, because I speak the language. That's a totally different situation to Denmark.
Migrants aren't destroying this country. Bankers are bankrupting this country. Fossil fuel giants, armed trades companies, they're the ones that are destroying this company. And ultimately, if we want to stop the small boats, and I want to stop the small boats, no one wants people risking their lives.
You treat them as asylum
absolutely do. That's an
seekers.
outrageous thing to say. They are asylum seekers.
Why do you stop them? Why do you want to stop them?
Because I want people to be able to get
I thought we're an open and tolerant country.
safe
Why do
and
you want to
managed
stop
routes
them?
so they can apply for asylum. Because most asylum cases are seen to be legitimate, over 80% of cases.
And
I want them to be able
problem.
to come here to a processing centre in a way that is dignified and treats people with humanity rather than as numbers or pieces of crap, which is the way the Labour government are treating them.
True, and again, she was just trying to openly lie and say, why are you treating them as asylum seekers? Because they literally are. It is in the name. They are seeking asylum, you fucking idiot. Why is the host not stopping her from interrupting? Because this is the impartial BBC. Sorry, no, the left-wing woke BBC. And Zack, fundamentally this is correct. In that if you really want to stop it, you have to have some kind of system where people can apply for asylum before they get here so they don't have to get here by small boat.
Oh, well, I'll put that back to the Minister later. Leila Cunningham, would you expect Reform MPs to vote for these measures announced today by the Home Secretary?
No, I don't, because you asked a very relevant question, Victoria. You said, if people come here illegally, why should they be granted asylum? You're rewarding illegal entry. We're rewarding crime. Our position is that if you come here illegally, you have committed a crime and you will be detained and removed. Right. And that's what any country that values sovereignty... So even though Nigel Farage posted on X today that the Home Secretary sounded like a Reform supporter, you don't think the Reform MPs will vote I think it's in the right direction, but I think it's virtue signalling. For instance, the three countries that she's going to prevent visas if they don't accept returns, we've only had a handful of people arrive on illegal boats. Why is she not including Pakistan in that? I'd like to see returns agreed.
Because no one's arrived here on small boat from Pakistan. The vast majority of asylum cases coming from Pakistan are people who've arrived here via regular means, and then once their visa is ended, they've claimed asylum. Now, I'm perfectly willing to admit, I think that there's a large cohort of those people who have claimed asylum having their visa expired from Pakistan probably aren't legitimate asylum seekers, and their acceptance rate is much lower than the people who arrive on small boat, who mostly come from countries with very high asylum acceptance rates like Iran and Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria. That's the reality. But most Pakistani asylum seekers arrive here on regular visas who then claim asylum at the end of their visa. It looks to me, again, this is purely anecdotal, that they are claiming asylum because they don't want to lose their status here, given that their visa has expired. But there are probably a non-zero number of cases where they do have a legitimate asylum claim because, you know, it's Pakistan. It's hardly the most tolerant society, right? There is quite literally a genocide happening in Balochistan. I'm pretty sure that if a Baloch person managed to get a visa to come here, they wouldn't really want to go back because of the whole genocide thing.
For the Pakistani rape gangs, but of course that's her political base. Would she dare disturb it? We have rapists walking the streets.
See what I mean, right? See what I mean? Shabana Mahmood tries to placate these people, and then they go, oh, well, you don't want to disturb the Pakistani rape gangs. And they're your political base, given that in the Commons she literally talked about people using racially based insults against her. Again, she's trying to placate people who fucking hate her, just for the place that her family is from. It's such insane posturing from Labour.
Convicted rapists, and we have a community that protected them, and Pakistan doesn't want to take them back. I'd like to see visa restrictions on that, but I'm not seeing that. In fact, I'm seeing that she's opening legal routes that will be community driven. Who will vet those communities? Who will prevent certain communities, certain religions from overtaking that community sponsorship, and we getting a higher proportion of, let's say, the Pakistani community that protected the rape gangs? How do we know more are not going to come in?
Well, no, because the only way they'll come in is if they have a legitimate asylum claim. That's the whole point of having an asylum system. God, these people know nothing. She knows nothing. I mean, she may know, she may not know, but it doesn't matter, because all she cares about is saying whatever she needs to be able to placate the absolutely monstrous fucking fascists that are her voter base.
Are you comfortable with taking personal assets off people who the government says have arrived here illegally?
Victoria, they're not coming with personal assets. And again, it's virtue signalling. They don't have enough personal assets to cover the huge tax bill that the taxpayer is paying to sustain them. I think in one press release, I said that they're going to confiscate their cars and their e-scooters. They're not arriving on boats and cars and e-scooters. They are still being... She does not also deal with the 100,000 that are here, over 100,000, that are being housed in hotels at the taxpayer's expense.
There probably is a point of agreement here, which is for taxpayers, the hotels are completely inappropriate, as are the barracks. Ultimately, these are huge lucrative contracts between government ministers and some of these companies, whereas actually we should be putting people into housing and treating people with dignity. Because actually,
housing that should go to British people.
If we allow people to work, we know that migration is of economic benefit. We prioritise British people. There's 150,000 vacancies in the National Health Service. We have vacancies in the construction industry.
I'm talking about for housing.
And we have an ageing population. Who is going to pay people pensions?
We have hundreds of thousands on the waiting list.
I mean, we could just build more housing. That's kind of what the government is proposing. And I think actually the real solution, as I've said before, is I think we need to have proper processing centres. And indeed, I think the government probably have the right track when they say they want to buy disused hotels to turn them into some form of temporary accommodation without having to rent out hotel space in privately owned hotels, which is significantly more expensive. And you could retrofit old hotels into being an asylum processing centre. But again, there needs to be a system to ensure that we can get this as efficiently as possible, with as many safeguards in place as possible, and to be done as quickly as possible to make sure that it's cheap and also we're treating people with dignity. What's funny, right, is that this has come to a real head because of the asylum hotels, which was done to get people out of residential housing, which has made it a real kind of hot spot for protests and stuff. No one really notices if there are a couple of refugees on the street. People definitely notice if there is an entire hotel of refugees down the road, you know? It's really increased the salience of the problem.
For social housing,
it's all a distraction from inequality.
It's not a distraction.
It's all a distraction for reform and their billionaire mates who want to divide this country rather than allow people to treat each other with dignity.
Do pause, because we can't hear.
True, very true from Zack. Literally, that's why reform care about this, so that you don't talk about the billionaires and the mega corporations that bankroll them to try and destroy the country, give them tax breaks and slash away your NHS to pay for it. That's the whole point, right? The Reform Party want to get rid of the NHS, and they want to do it to benefit their private sector healthcare mates, and so they can cut taxes for the American megacorporations that they want to destroy and take over this society. The biggest tax break that they were going to give in their manifesto at the last election was for the biggest megacorporations in the world. The biggest megacorporations in the world. That's who bankrolls them. That's who their politics is done for, right? People don't give political parties money for nothing. They don't do it without expecting ROI. And the ROI that the rich expect off of Reform UK is to get you fighting amongst yourselves about asylum rather than talking about the massive inequality between the millionaires and billionaires and the megacorporations and the regular people of this country. Right on, Zack. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.